Hey guys, today's video is for newly diagnosed GBS patients. So I already have an article written that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's up on my website and it is a very popular post that a lot of people use. So now that I've got my channel up and running, I wanted to get it converted into a video format for people that are newly diagnosed or for family members that are looking for resources. One of the most common messages that I get is actually from family members of somebody who's been recently diagnosed and they're looking for answers. They're desperate and they just want some sort of support. So, and I know because I've seen my family be in that situation too. So I want to provide help that maybe just answer some questions or give you guys some advice that worked for me. So please know whatever I tell you, it may not help your situation, but maybe it will. And I hope that some pieces of it do resonate for you. So as a GBS survivor and as somebody that was in ICU for so long, what sort of things helped me and what sort of things would I want others to know? So the number one thing that I would want people to know is that GBS is an acute disease. And that means that once the patient hits their absolute worst, they're going to plateau, they're going to remain the same for a while, but then they're going to slowly start to improve. The recovery process is going to be long and painful, but eventually they're going to get there. So you just need to keep reminding them that they will get there. You just have to stay strong. You have to keep fighting. You got to take it day by day and you just got to keep moving forward. If you are dealing with somebody that is in ICU, perhaps they're ventilated in their mouth or they have a trach in their throat and they're unable to communicate, get them a communication board. Generally, a physiotherapist or speech therapy will bring that up for you. But if you're in a smaller hospital or somebody hasn't thought of that, get them a communication board by writing out the letters of the alphabet on a piece of paper. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have them either point to letters if they have movement in their hands. If they don't, you point to the letters and they can either nod or they can blink whenever you pick the letters that they want you to use. I also suggest that you and the patient come up with different movements that they can do when they want something rather than spelling it out over and over again. So for example, I would open my mouth really wide like that whenever I was in pain and needed more pain medication. I would shake my head back and forth when I was really hot and needed a cold cloth. And when I had movement in my hands, I would go like this and wiggle my fingers when I wanted the communication board. So talking about pain, not everybody experiences pain. I've talked to a few people that never had pain during their acute phase of GBS, but I think most do. And that pain that they are in is severe. And I hate to break it to you, but I mean, what they're going through is hell. And it's because of the inflammation in the nerves. And so it's causing your body to just be completely inflamed and it's making those nerves go all crazy and it's causing a burning, tingling, throbbing, aching, every type of pain you could think of everywhere in your body. So they're gonna need some pretty heavy duty medication. The doctors will work with you on that. They're gonna probably need an opioid of some sort. But please don't let them suffer. Doctors might say like, oh, I'm sure they're not in that much pain, but they are. And the pain that I experienced made me want to die. Like it was the most intense pain I had ever experienced. And I don't want people to suffer through that. So fight for them, advocate for them. If that doesn't seem to be working, try a different medication, try a different brand. Bring in a pain specialist, those do exist, somebody that can come in and try and get a handle on it, but please don't make them suffer. Some GBS patients have hypersensitivity, and not everybody, I did, and what that is that basically you have sensory issues and your nerves don't feel things properly. So for me, tiny little touches like that felt like somebody was taking a knife and stabbing me into the arm. I couldn't even handle a sheet touching my feet because it felt like somebody was taking razor blades to the bottom of my feet. So it's extremely painful. Be very careful when you're moving them, when you are touching them. Go very slowly, very gentle. Explain this to nurses. So many nurses don't understand that and they just come in and they're just like tossing the patient around. Please don't let them do that. Make sure that they understand that even just tiny little touches are so painful. Another thing to know about is that their autonomic nervous system is also going to be affected. Those are things that affect like their ability to have a bowel movement, their ability to go pee, their ability to regulate body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure. It's probably going to be all over the place. I've seen some nurses that are like, oh my God, what's happening? It's very common. Yes, it's very dangerous. It's very scary. There's a reason why they're in the hospital, but GBS affects all those things as well. As a caregiver, learn about GBS and communicate it to them. When I was diagnosed, I had never heard of it before, and it was terrifying to not know what was happening to your body, and I wanted to know. So communicate what you're learning to them so that they understand. Go online, read other people's stories, watch other people's videos, show them those videos if they're up for it, of course. But they need to be reminded that there are like thousands of people that have recovered from this disease, many of them completely, other than some minor residuals. But people do get back to their lives after GBS, and they need to be reminded that. Even better, if you can find somebody that had GBS before and that can come visit them in the hospital, just to have somebody walk through the door, somebody that's been in their shoes and who has recovered, it's so powerful. That's something that I had done for me, and that's something that I do now, and it just makes such a difference to be able to connect with somebody that understands what you're going through. You can go to the GBS Foundation website and you can ask for a liaison. Basically, it's a volunteer that has had GBS, and maybe they have somebody within the area that they can send out for you. There are also online Facebook groups. So if you go to Facebook, in the search bar, search GBS support or Guillain-Barre support, you will find so many GBS and CIDP support groups. And they're awesome because you can literally type in a question and have that question answered by thousands of people all over the world at different times of the day. So you're able to get a lot of different opinions, a lot of different insights from different patients who may have been through what you're going through. Connect with others. The GBS community, it's really big actually, and it's an amazing support system. It's a patient thing is a Facebook group, and they put out tons of information. They do videos and interviews with survivors. So that's a good place. Like I said, all the Facebook groups. On Instagram, you use the hashtag Guillain-Barre or hashtag GBS, and you can find people that way. And it's just amazing to be able to connect with people all over the world that understand, that can answer your questions, and that you can connect with. And you just bond with them instantly because they get it. Going back to the patient and how best to take care of them, one suggestion I have is to transform the room, make it feel more at home. I know that's going to be hard. It's still a hospital. Bring their pillows from home, blankets from home, put pictures up on their walls, bring in music to kind of cheer things up, anything to kind of make them feel a little bit better. Take care of them. A lot of times nurses don't have time to kind of do those small details, but when you're laying in a hospital bed for weeks, you feel disgusting. So do things that make them feel a little bit better, like brushing their teeth. Get an electric toothbrush, that makes things way easier. Brush their hair. If it's a girl or if it's somebody with long hair, put it into a braid so it doesn't get matted so easily. Put lotion on their hands. Put lip chap on their lips. Shave their legs if that's what they want. Paint their toenails, paint their fingernails, just anything to kind of make them feel a little bit better. I even had nurses sometimes and friends that did my makeup for me. Do things that help pass the time. It is so boring in ICU, and I shouldn't say boring because there's so much going on and it's so horrific, but just things that kind of help distract them. So listen to music, watch movies, watch TV shows, read the messages, people that are reaching out to them, read them books, even watch the news if that's what they're into. As I felt so isolated in ICU that it was nice to see what was going on in the world and see what was happening outside of my room. Do range of motion exercises. So those are movements that keep the muscles and joints moving. So things like this, arms moving up like this. There's a whole list, and you can usually get that from your physiotherapist team or online. But it is so important, and it's going to be hard because the patient, it's usually painful for them, and a lot of times they might refuse it. But it is so important. And I'll give you a really good example. So one of the movements that my family members did was lifting my arms up. And I had the trach in here, and then it went out onto the right-hand side into the ventilator beside my bed. And it would bump the trach tube and it would make me puke and it would make me sick. And eventually I stopped letting them do that. So what we would do is we would lift my right arm up to here and we would lift my left arm up to here. So that's how it went for about 2 months. Then when I was in recovery, after I'd gotten out of ICU, no longer had a trach, I started doing rehab and I was getting movement back and I started moving my arms again. When I went to move them, this is what my arms did. And the one arm, I mean, it started out and I could go like this, but this one I could barely move. It was so stiff. So range of motion is so important to keep everything moving and active, and you can do it 2, 3, 4 times a day. Like I said, it might be painful for them, but it's important and it does help pass the time as well. I have a lot of respect for doctors and nurses and the jobs that they do, and some of them are so amazing, but not always. If you have a nurse that is just horrible and just treats your patient really poorly, advocate for them, please, and ask for that nurse to be reassigned. We had to do that on occasion, maybe I think only once or twice, and on the flip side, if you have a really good nurse that just handles the patient really well and the patient seems to relax in their presence, ask if you can have that person more often. So many times nurses just aren't used to dealing with a GBS patient, especially in ICU. I mean, they're not used to patients being around for that long. So if somebody has experience with GBS, sometimes that makes such a difference. Take what the doctors tell you about the patient's recovery with a grain of salt. I think GBS is just way too unpredictable and everybody's case is so unique. It is not what's written in their textbooks and it can be all over the map. So when doctors tell you, you know what, you're probably not, or this patient's probably not going to recover, which happens all the time, I think it's extremely inappropriate that that's even said. Just because so many people, I mean, there's miracles that happen all the time. And that happened to me, and that's why I talk about it, is that I was told I would not walk for 2 years. And had I believed that, maybe I wouldn't have tried, but I didn't believe it and I refused to believe it and I fought and I walked within 5 months. Doctors truly cannot predict what your outcome is going to be. And even the tests, I mean, I had an EMG test that showed that I had severe damage. And then the next day my shin moved. And so it just goes to show that, I mean, sometimes they're wrong. So like I said, take it with a grain of salt, focus on those tiny improvements and just keep fighting. Use a journal, take pictures, take videos if they will allow it. I hated that when my mom was snapping pictures of me. Looking back now, I'm so appreciative of it that I have something to look back on. So if they will let you, but if not, then at least write down everything that's going on in the day. Again, it'll help pass the time and it'll also give you a baseline to go back on. To that GBS patient, it is going to feel like they are not getting better. Even when you see it, I know for me, it felt like I was on my deathbed, paralyzed, not getting better at all for weeks and months. But there was just small little improvements and I had to be reminded of that and I had to be shown that. So my mom would show me the videos from 2 weeks before and say, look this is what you couldn't do then and this is what you can do now. And they need to be reminded of that daily. And they need to be shown that daily or talked about of this is what you couldn't do before and this is what you can do now. And that is a sign that you are improving, even if it doesn't feel like it. They say GBS stands for getting better slowly because it's such a slow process. So I always say, depending on the patient, you may have to measure their progress over weeks, over months, and over years sometimes. So whatever they couldn't do at this certain point in time, months later, can they do it now? And that's a sign of improvement. So this is going to be a very depressing, dark time in this person's life. And I mean, obviously that happens when your life seems to be taken away from you in an instant and then you're paralyzed and can't move and don't know what your life is going to be like. So they're probably going to be very depressed. They're probably going to be dealing with anxiety. You can get them some antidepressants. They also help with nerve pain as well. Some anti-anxiety medications. But just understand, they're probably going to be pretty depressed for a while. And you're going to be their strength. And you have to be positive for them. When you come into that room, you got to try and keep that smile on your face. And some days that might piss them off. I know that did for me, but you got to be positive. You got to be their strength because they don't have any. And the last thing that I say is you just got to take it one day at a time. There's going to be so many things that they're going to have to do. If they're on a breathing tube, they're going to learn how to breathe again. And then they're going to have to learn how to move their arms again. They're going to have to learn how to walk again. They're going to have to learn to type again. And there's so many tasks that are ahead for them. And it's scary because you're like, how am I going to do that? And that gave me anxiety a lot, thinking about the future and wondering how the hell I'm going to do it when I'm completely paralyzed and can't move. And you got to just tell them they got to focus on one thing at a time, one day at a time. Come up with small goals, so goals that are attainable in the near future, and you check those off when they are reached, and you celebrate those tiny milestones. You celebrate every tiny little finger movement. So I hope this video helps you or helps your patient that you're dealing with. I know for me, I mean, when I look back, all these things were done for me, and I have written them down so that I could remember to share them with you guys. But looking back, I mean, it was still a horrible experience. But I do hope that it helps in some way. And I know that the patient probably isn't ready to hear this yet, but I mean, this situation and this experience, it can change you for the better. And for me, everything happened for a reason, and it changed my life, and it made me a better person and made me look at my outlook differently, and it made me 10 times stronger than I ever thought was possible. It made me who I am, and I appreciate the whole experience. And so that's what GBS is going to do. It's going to show this person their strength. It is going to show them how much stronger that they are than they think, and you are going to get through this.